Good morning. Yay, there it is. 3 times the charm. It's great to see you all here this morning. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and here we are at the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. That spaciousness, that timelessness, that grace that always abides within us, that we recognize as we turn within and breathe and let go, letting go of everything that brought us here, and being present in this moment now as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
From Sabbath, Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Our Busy Lives, by Wayne Muller. All life requires a rhythm of rest. There is a rhythm in the way day dissolves into night and night into morning. There is a rhythm as the active growth of spring and summer is quieted by the necessary dormancy of fall and winter. There is a tidal rhythm, a deep, eternal conversation between the land and the great sea. When we live life without listening to the timing of things, when we live and work in 24-hour shifts without rest, we are on wartime, mobilized for battle. Yes, we are strong and capable people. We can work without stopping, faster and faster. Electric lights making artificial days so the whole machine can labor without ceasing. But remember, no living thing lives like this. There are greater rhythms, seasons and hormonal cycles, and sunsets and moonrises, and great movements of sea and stars. We are part of the creation story, subject to all its laws and rhythms. Your life is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be opened.
And so shall we together open the gift of our lives right now? Open the gift of this present moment as we breathe and let go and let God be God. As we let love be love. Let whatever it is that drew us here into this sacred space this morning, no matter what name we call it, whether we call it God or spirit or love or higher power or beingness, it goes by many names. But it is the essence of our being. And sometimes it goes by the name I am. And so today, as we sing, I am remembering who I am, let us remember all of the tidal rhythms that flow within us. The joy and the sorrow, the darkness and the light, the busyness and the rest. And recognize that it is all part of our wholeness. And as we know this for ourselves, we know it for the entire world. We bless all beings everywhere with our song. In the beauty of this thunderous silence, we remember the restful presence of the I am that lives and moves and has its perfect being through every detail of our lives. Let us breathe in deeply and remember well, and then exhale, gently opening our eyes in love with what is as it is, and so it is.
What do you do when you've done all you can and seems like it's never enough? What do you say when your friends turn away and you're all alone? What do you you give when you've given your all, and it seems like you can't make it through? Well, you just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand. Let the Lord see you through. After you've done all you can, you just stand. And how do you handle the guilt of your past? How do you deal with the shame? And how can you smile when your heart has been broken and filled with pain, filled with pain? What do you give when you're given your all, and it seems like you can't make it through? You just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand. Watch love see you through. And after you've done all you can, you just stand, stand, and be sure. Do not entangle with that bondage again. You just stand, stand, and be sure. God has a purpose. God has a plan. Tell me, what do you give when you're given your all? Seems like you just can't make it through. You just stand, stand. Come on, you just stand. Don't you dare give up all now. Don't you bow and don't you bend. Don't give up, oh, and don't you give in. Now you prayed and you cried, and you prayed and you cried. You tried and tried, oh, you prayed and you cried. Just hold on, just be strong. God will step in and it won't be long. After you've done all you can, after you've done all you can, after you've gone through the storm, through the rain, after you've done all you can, after you've done all you can, you just, you just stand.
Beautiful song, thank you. However, I think I'll sit. Just so you know. Start. So it's great to see all of you here today. Look how beautiful you are. Would you just look to the person to the right or the left of you and say, "You are so beautiful." Now, did you do it, Chris? Okay, good. All right. Did anybody do Kenny? Because, oh, okay, Kenny got covered. Okay. All right. balcony, you're on your own, okay? I'm procrastinating because, this talk is about letting God, and I kind of decided to let God do this talk. And so I'm not sure where to start, but let me start by telling you what I think this talk is about. I think this talk is for anybody that feels like they have too much to do, anybody who feels stressed out, anybody that is being pulled in many, many different directions. And if you're not in that category, if you don't have too much to do, perhaps this talk is also for people who fear that they do not have enough to do, or that they're not doing enough, or that they don't have enough, or that they are not being enough. The two conditions, having too much to do and feeling afraid that you're not doing enough, both actually come from the same source, and that is the source that is the place within us that rejects our divine nature of timelessness, spaciousness, grace, and all-sufficiency. So if you fit into any of those categories, if you've ever rejected your timelessness, spaciousness, grace, and all-sufficiency, then perhaps we can work together to reconnect with those qualities that are part of this thing, this mystery that we call God or love or higher power or whatever it is we want to call it. Some people call it Howard, as in our Father who art in heaven. Howard be thy name, right? One of the tools that we're using this month is this book, Lying Awake by Mark Saltzman. I have wanted to offer this book to the congregation as a featured book for a long time now. I've been here about 12 years, and I read it probably 15 years ago, and I always thought it would be a good book. But I was a little challenged with offering it because it has some ambiguities, and it's not really clear. It's a novel, so I thought it might be a fun summer read. And it's a fun summer read about a Carmelite nun with a brain tumor. As you may know or not know, the Carmelite nuns are not really like The Sound of Music. They're pretty strict, and they take a vow of silence, and they're a very strict order. It's also written by an atheist, which it makes it sort of an interesting thing to offer in a church. But I'll tell you why I'm offering it. Part of it is the story itself. The book itself reads like an ongoing prayer. And the story of the book, without giving you too many spoilers, is about a woman who was raised Catholic, and she ended up rejecting the church, but then she had a mentor who was a nun, and she decided to become a nun. For the first 10 years of her work with the Carmelites, she was inspired and felt like there was wonderful connection. And then something started shifting. She felt distant from this entity called God. She felt like her work was meaningless, and all of the prayers and all of the work for the poor she was doing and all of the meditation just felt like she was doing it by rote. But she persisted, and she kept on going, and then, all of a sudden, she started having ecstatic visions, these divine moments of connection with God. And she started writing about them and ended up writing a book of poetry, a book of ecstatic poetry that she published, and it raised enough money to put a roof on the convent. So she's having these ecstatic visions, but then she starts having some other things happen. She starts fainting and starts having headaches. She goes to the doctor and finds out that she's having ecstatic visions because she has a brain tumor and epilepsy. If you've read anything about nuns or Carmelites or the saints of the past, that's something that they frown upon, is that they want to screen people to see whether or not they have something like a brain tumor or epilepsy, and they're calling it ecstatic visions. Hence the title, Lying Awake. So the conflict of the book, again, without going too much into it, is this nun having ecstatic visions, or does she have a brain tumor? And do you know what my answer is? Good. Yeah, you all listen in church, don't you? When in doubt, answer yes. Do you want to wash my car this afternoon? No. Okay. Probably someone in this church would offer to do that. It's very sweet. But okay, so yes, the truth is that it could be both things. There are people in this movement that say, profoundly, they proclaim, there is no God. No, wait, there is no illness in God. There is no illness in God. Whereas I would say, that may be true, but God is most certainly in the illness. Everything leads us home, to that place of divine connection, to that place of timelessness, spaciousness, all-sufficiency, and grace. The thing is that we often do our best to avoid that timelessness, spaciousness, all-sufficiency, and grace. Another reason I like this book is the story about how this book was written. This book was written by a gentleman named Mark Saltzman, who, as he says in one of his other books, an autobiographical books, he came from a very, very neurotic family. He was raised by rabbits, he says. And he said because he was an atheist, when he would get anxious, he wouldn't really have anything other than his intellect to fall back on. And he tried the spiritual path. In fact, it said in one of his books that when he was in junior high, he wanted to become a supreme Buddhist meditator. So he actually got a bald skull cap and put it on his head because he had read that if you're bald, you're closer to God, right? Anybody here closer to God due to baldness? Rick White. Okay, right? So he did that. And then, and he meditated, and his life went on, and he still was kind of neurotic and anxious. He did have a lot of opportunities. He was a cellist. He became a cellist in high school, and he ended up getting a full scholarship to Yale, where he played the cello. He had the opportunity to appear on stage with Yo-Yo Ma. While he was at Yale, he became interested in Chinese studies and martial arts, and he studied both of those things, went to China, taught English in China for 2 years, and also became extremely well-versed in martial arts, so that when he came back to the States, he was a master teacher. At that time, he wrote a book called Iron and Silk, which became a movie, and he starred in the movie. And his life was seeming like it was beautiful and it was charmed. He had met the woman of his dreams, Jessica Yu, who is also in the film business. She's a documentary film director. And he had written this book, Iron and Silk, and then a couple of other books, and everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, barren wasteland. Everything dried up. He got married to his sweetheart. They had 2 beautiful children. And he said he was sorry to find out that she was far more talented and successful than he was, that this was distressing news to him. He was happy for her and grateful for her, but he wanted to be talented and successful too. So he had this idea to write this book, Lying Awake, a book about a Carmelite nun with a brain tumor written by an atheist. And he struggled with it. He struggled with it. He had been successful, so he got a big advance. He got a big advance from his publisher, with a deadline, say a 2-year deadline. The deadline came and went. Still no book. The publisher hated it. Another deadline came and went. Still no book. The publisher hated it. Another deadline came and went. Still no book. He was trying all kinds of things, trying to write what he thought he should write, trying to write what his publisher wanted, trying to write what he thought the people wanted, and still no book. He was getting frustrated and even more anxious and afraid that his life as a writer was over, and how would he support his family? Well, at that time, his wife, who sounds very wise, said to him, Mark, I think what you really need to do is go on a retreat. Take yourself out of the picture and go on a retreat for a little while. And so he did. He went to a writer's retreat off in the woods somewhere in California. He said that he packed his suitcase and his computer, and he purchased a box of wine. And the first couple of days, he sat on the porch drinking out of his box of wine and just looking at the trees and the flowers and beautiful birds chirping. He listened to them. And then he went into the place where the retreat center was being organized, and one of the organizers was there, and he spoke with her, and they were having a conversation, and he said to her, this is a great opportunity, this is a great retreat. I think I'm really going to get some great work done here in this period, in this 4 weeks or so that I'm here. And she looked at him and she said, oh, honey, you don't need my permission, but let me give you permission to do nothing. People need to rest. They need to refuel. If resting is the only thing you accomplish while you're here, that will be enough. And so he took that to heart. He went back to his cabin. He drank some more wine out of the box, and he said, okay, I'm going to rest. I'm going to rest. And he rested, and for a while nothing happened. And then, in a few days, he felt some inspiration shift within him. And to paraphrase the way he describes it, instead of being pushed by fear and obligation and should and what he thought other people wanted him to write, he started getting pulled by the story that wanted to be told. How about that? He sat down and wrote the story, wrote this book with very few edits in about 2 weeks because of the rest, because of getting away, because of letting go and letting God be God. Another word for God is the creative principle, the creative process. Someone was asking me the other day as I was describing what I might speak about this morning, and they were asking me, what happened? Why did that work so well? Why did the rest work so well? And I think what happened, the way I described it in the moment, was it felt like this guy, Mark Saltzman, in all of his efforting to write this book, was taking the wholeness of spirit, or the Holy Spirit, right? Or the creative process, whatever you want to call it, and he had her in a chokehold, and he was squeezing her into a roach motel, right? I wasn't sure if people in California would know what a roach motel is. If you've lived in North Carolina, you know what it is, right? But I see lots of nodding heads. Roaches check in, but they don't check out, right? It's a little box that's got sticky stuff in it. Is that a motorcycle? Okay. A little box with sticky stuff in it, and the roaches just get stuck in there. And you know what? I was thinking about this image of the Roach Motel and thinking what the wall art on the Roach Motel, you know how hotels often have like really kind of cheap, cheesy art, and what the Roach Motel wall art would be not motivational sayings, but demotivational sayings. Like, you suck, Mark Saltzman. You can't write your way out of a Roach Motel, Mark Saltzman. There is no hope for you whatsoever. You're trying to write somebody else's book and it's not working. So that's what he did. He squeezed himself, squeezed the creative process, squeezed that all into this little tiny roach motel, and it took sitting down and resting and breathing and allowing the letting go of all of those obligations and pressures and shoulds for him to become free and for the story that wanted to be told to come out. Now, what does this have to do with all of us? Did you know that you are the author of your own life? And there is a slim possibility that certain obligations and certain shoulds and certain stories that you think you have to tell are squeezing your creative spirit and stuffing it into a roach motel with demotivational art on the walls. The way to get out of that cycle is to, first of all, notice how you're doing it, how you're suppressing that creative process through all of the busyness, through all of the have-tos, through all of the not-enoughs. And then gently, peacefully, through rest and letting go and letting God be God, moving into that place that I spoke about before, that place of timelessness, spaciousness, all-sufficiency, and grace. So how are we choking the wholeness of spirit in ourselves? Probably everybody's doing it in a slightly different way. I'll tell you one way that I've noticed. I get a lot of feedback on the talks that I offer, and most of it's pretty good. And when it's not, that's good too in its own way. But what I love is when I've connected with somebody and they say, that same thing happens to me. And one of the greatest pieces of connections that I've offered recently is just so silly, but I'm gonna see if it's true. In my perception, this is a piece that a lot of people connected on. And that was the time recently when I spoke about playing Beat the Clock with the microwave. Does anybody else have these Olympic trials going on in your kitchen, right? I can empty the dishwasher in 2 minutes. How about you? Folding the laundry, that usually requires heating up leftovers. That's like 3 to 4 minutes. I can usually fold the laundry in 3 to 4 minutes. But when I'm making something in the microwave, which is moving fast in its own way, Usually, not only am I moving fast by doing something in the microwave and not really taking the time to cook, but I'm also playing beat the clock with the microwave and trying to rush through something else so that I can get something done while my cooking is happening. Am I the only one? Are there other things that I'm missing? What are some of the things you do to beat the microwave? Anybody? Wash the dishes. Anyone else? Load the dishwasher. Feed what? What was that? I didn't hear that. Take a shower? Feed the birds, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so, and there are probably some things that don't really need to be shared too, right? Okay. But I think we're all playing beat the clock with the microwave. Or something like it. You know, the other thing I've noticed recently too is when I'm driving. When I'm driving, I'm usually very much focused on either where I've been or where I want to be. And I'm noticing as my life gets busier and as my to-do list gets fuller that I have very little patience when I'm driving for where I am right now. And don't you think that impatience ripples out and affects the other areas of our lives, that there is an impatience for where we are right now? Because dang it, in driving, you're not really getting anything done unless you text and drive, which I do not recommend, right? You know that old church sign I've told you about? If you love Jesus, honk. If you want to meet him, text and drive, right? Right? Driving doesn't feel like it's accomplishing quite enough. You're just sitting in your car, maybe you're listening to the radio, but it's just not enough somehow. And I think we project that consciousness onto many, many, many moments of our lives. We're thinking about where we've been and where we want to go, but right now is somehow inferior. And that gets in our way. And then I have another thought of some of the ways that we get in our way of realizing the spaciousness and infinite nature of our being, the grace, the all-sufficiency. And this has to do with something that happened to me recently. Let me start by saying that I am a rather dedicated minister, that I work a lot. And you may have noticed that although I don't speak every Sunday, I show up pretty much every Sunday to sort of massage the consciousness and embrace the congregation and just be present. It just feels important to me to do that. And I've showed up with food poisoning, and I've showed up with a dog bite in the face, and I've showed up with cancer. And this is not to show you how great I am, it's to kind of show you how kind of kooky I can be sometimes. Because when Nipun Mehta was here, if you missed it last week, we had a guest speaker, and a bunch of his friends came, and they have this immense organization that's dedicated to kindness and healing the world through simple acts of kindness, and they have something like 500,000 members. Anyway, when he was here, he was so touched by all of you, by the consciousness in the church, and by the energy in the church, and by the beauty of the church. So touched that he was here on Sunday. On Tuesday, he emailed me, and he said, I want to break my own rules. Every year, we have a retreat for 30 of the leaders in Service Space. Service Space is the name of his organization. We never invite people that are outside of Service Space, that do not have a leadership role in that. But we'd like to invite you to attend this retreat. Thank you. Thank you. You know, okay, thank you. Let me just accept that praise for a minute. Okay, that's enough, okay. All right. What I was gonna say before I decided to honor you all by accepting the praise, which is challenging for me. I was raised by rabbits too, just so you know. Is that when Nipun and his people kept asking me, how did you do it? How did you create this great space? How did you, this is different than other churches we've been in. How is it different? What did you do? And I just said, it's not me. It's not me. It's God and it's the congregation and it's all of us working together. It's God working through me and the congregation. I happen to be a placeholder, the one with the microphone, which is sometimes a good thing. And it's all of us working together, but it's not me, right? So anyway, Nipun gave me this wonderful, wonderful invitation, this opportunity, this beautiful thing that would cause me to miss another Sunday. in August, and I'm already missing next Sunday because of a workshop that another congregant with his wicked ways invited me to come to. He looks like he doesn't want to be singled out, so I'll just look over on this side of the room. It's a wonderful conference that is something that I really need to attend, but I have to miss that one, then I have to miss the one after that to go to Nipun's thing. My inner monologue went something like this: wow, I got invited to this great thing. It's a huge honor. It's really wonderful. I'm going to be with all these inspiring people. I will probably grow in my relationship with grace and timelessness and passion for this message and passion for ministry. Oh, it's going to be so wonderful. Yeah, but I got a church to run. So I'm not sure if I can go. Oh, you're taking away the punchline, you little stinker. I am going, and I'll tell you how I got to that in just a moment. See, now this was going to be a talk that was very artfully crafted, where I left you hanging as to whether or not I should go, and then didn't tell you at the end. But certain people, whom I love dearly, even when I run into them in Trader Joe's, which was a treat. Anyway. So that was going on in my mind, and what it reminded me of, which made me laugh, and which also was part of why I decided to go, was it reminded me of the story about Ram Dass that he tells, where he was driving home from wherever he was living at the time, driving home, and it was Ram Dass is a spiritual author, right, and a teacher. He was driving home, it was a torrential downpour, and he passed somebody on the side of the road who was changing a flat tire, and I don't know, I'm embellishing probably, but according to me, Ram Dass rolled down his window and he said, "Oh, dude, what's going on?" And the guy said, "Oh, I have a flat tire." And Ram Dass said, "Oh, yeah, I'd really like to help you, but I have to go home and write my book." And it gets better. The guy with the flat tire says, "Really? What's your book about? What's the name of your book?" And Ram Dass says, "Oh, it's How Can I Help?" So that's kind of like the Nipun thing with me. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to get all inspired and I have to run a church. Oh, my God. Oh. So I think part of the message in all of that is to notice the stories that we tell ourselves. Are we really too busy to stop for help? Are we really too busy to stop and help ourselves and do what we need to do to feed our souls? Something in your life is screaming at you right now, is tapping at your window, and maybe you've ignored it for so long that you're not able to notice it. But what I'm going to invite you to do is to notice what it is that you wish to express, what it is that wishes to express through you, what grace, kindness, wonder, love, creative power, creative force wants to happen through your life, and will you cultivate the skills to listen to it and then to answer that call? Yes! Like you said, you should go, Bonnie. You should do that, people. Right? Good. All right. I think some of the things that will help is to practice the things that I've been speaking about: timelessness, all-sufficiency, and grace. But how do we practice those things when we don't even really know what they mean? I remember reading something by Ken Wilber who talked about timelessness, where he said, people think that timelessness means eternal days, day after day after day after day after day, but really it is this quality of being that encompasses everything right now, here in the present moment. How do you practice that? I think, for one, maybe you stop playing Beat the Clock with the microwave. Maybe instead of playing Beat the Clock with the microwave, you could meditate instead. Maybe when we're getting impatient with driving, or where we were, or where we want to be, instead, we could just practice timelessness by breathing and being still. We will need to be reminded of this, because there are many, many, many voices, both externally and internally, that will tell us that this is not the way to be in life, that we have to move through life at a rapid pace and always be focused on where we're going. We will need each other to remind us. There's a story that Nipun tells about one of his friends who was in some type of business, some home-based business, and he was always working. It was a startup, and he was working constantly, and he was always looking at his computer screen. And when he wasn't looking at his computer screen, he was looking at his tablet, and then when he wasn't looking at that, he was looking at his iPhone. And he said to Nipun, I am so busy. I'm always looking at a screen. I've always got something to do. I need to find some way to relax. Nipun, is there an app for that? And Nipun said, yes, there is. It's called the off button. What a concept. What does pushing the off button look like for you? Does it mean putting your feet up? Does it mean going for a walk? Does it mean sitting and listening to someone that you love and really, really listening? Does it mean writing in a journal? Does it mean breathing? And does it mean knowing that as you do those things, your world will not collapse? In fact, your world will be better for it. So yes, I decided that I am going to go to Nipun's workshop in 2 weeks, his retreat rather. See how I just made that into work? It's a retreat. It's a retreat, Reverend. It's a retreat. I'm going to Nipun's retreat in several weeks. And one of the reasons that I decided was, first of all, it pulled at me very, very deeply that I was supposed to go. I came out the minute I got the email and I said to Hugh, oh, there's this email that's pulling at me. What is it? It's a retreat. He's like, you should go to that. And then because I felt like I needed to ask permission for someone, and we have a board meeting, I wrote to the entire board, and I got a response from the whole board saying you should go. In fact, Lonnie, our sweet, gentle board president, yelled at me, meaning that she wrote in all capitals and said, you are going to that retreat. So how are you going to argue with that, right? So that's what I'm doing to practice timelessness and spaciousness, and all-sufficiency, and grace. I'm an overachiever, so I'm also going to visit my sister while I'm up there. Another thing that you can do, that we can do, and then I'll close after this, is trust. Have you noticed recently that there is as Deepak Chopra calls it this, an infinite organizing principle that always has our backs, that is always guiding us exactly where we need to go. I wrote a blog last week about footprints, and it was a story about getting a footprint from my dog when she was passing away, but then it moved into something else. It moved into this idea that there are invisible footprints that surround us always. In the story that I told, I chose to start with the footprints that began. Who knew? The footprints that began when a young man named John, in a roller skating rink in the 40s, skated up to a young woman named Emily and said, will you skate with me? And then they got married, and they had 4 little girls. And they raised their girls to value culture and education and animals, among other things. That led me to a college where I met my friends Debbie and Jeff. The footprints brought me back to New York, where I met my husband, who gave me a cat for Christmas that reawakened my reverence for animals. We moved back. The footprints brought us back to California, where again we were reunited with Debbie and Jeff. They told us that we had to get this certain puppy that was being born into the world, Stella. I said, I don't want a dog. They're too much work. They're too heartbreaking. And I was right. They are. But Stella's what brought me here. It's that she loved to run on the beaches in Ventura. And that's why I came up here. And that's why I spoke to someone who I've never seen since. I was wearing a religious science t-shirt, and she came up to me and she said, oh, I see you know about religious science. Yeah, I go to that church, that big building on the corner of Laurel and Santa Clara. And when we finished that conversation, I said to myself, you know, I never really ever thought I would be a pulpit minister. I don't want to do that. And I said, but if that church in Ventura opens up, Stella likes it up here so much, I might consider applying. 2 weeks later, the minister resigned. And here we are in this moment, right? And it's not about me. I invite you to take any tiny piece of your life, anything that's significant or insignificant, and then look backwards and see where you want to start and see how all of this crazy path of connecting the dots with footprints brought you to where you are right now. And to me, that is evidence of the infinite organizing principle that always has our backs, that is working in your life right now. And there is nothing to say that it will ever stop working, because it is infinite. It is timeless. It is all sufficiency. It is all grace. Usually when I close my talks, I invite people to consider, what will you do with these words? Today I'd like you to consider something else. What will you not do with these words? What will you give up? How will you let go and let God be God? Let's start right now. Let us pray. I turn within and just trust and know that there truly is this infinite organizing principle that we call God, that we call love, that we call power, that we call grace, that we call the mystery. Whatever it is, there is something here that drew us together in all of its fullness, in all of its wholeness, in all of its emptiness, in all of its brokenness. It is all God, the darkness and the light, the joy and the sorrow, everything working together to create something mystical and magical and wonderful and powerful. When we connect with that, how powerful we are. For we have the entire universe within us when we remember who we are. And so today I connect with that. I connect with that power, I connect with that presence, and as I speak in the first person, I speak for every single person sitting in this room, because truly there is only one being here, and that being is the life of Spirit. In this divine connection, I know that our lives are opened and transformed and moved into a greater awareness of the truth of who we are, that we practice timelessness in ways that are unique and special for us, that we are called to practice spaciousness and all-sufficiency and grace, and that we stand open to the call of our best possible life, to being the author of our lives, and to writing a life that is deep and sweet and meaningful and helpful to others. We have the courage to let go. We have the courage to rest. We have the courage to do nothing. We have the courage to just be there, to just sit, even if it feels irresponsible. We have the courage to allow. And we stand in joyful anticipation without attachment to results, but simply anticipating that something wonderful comes through our willingness to create a time of rest, a time of spaciousness, a time of Sabbath. I am so grateful for this truth, so grateful to know that the words that we have shared here today can make a difference in our lives, and as we make a difference in our lives, this ripples out and blesses the others in our lives, and that ripples out and blesses the entire world. So we are doing the important work of self-remembering and reminding here to create this beautiful paradise that we call the planet Earth. It is good to know that, and I give thanks for it. I give thanks for this spiritual center and every single person in it, every single person seen today and unseen today. I give thanks for this teaching that has taught us so much as we expand and continue to remain open at the top. I give thanks for all spiritual paths. I bless all of them, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. I bless fundamentalists and atheists who write beautiful books about Carmelite nuns. I bless everyone, for everyone is a blessing. And with a heart that is so filled with blessedness and so filled with gratitude, I say, thank you, Spirit. Thank you, God. Thank you for my life. And I release these words into the mystery that takes these words and always says yes. I let go. I let God be God. And together we say, and so it is. I am
I was blue just as blue as I could be. Every day was a cloudy day for me. Then my God came knocking at my door. Skies were gray, but they're not gray anymore, no. Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-da. Blue birds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright, never saw things looking so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, when you're in love, by how they fly. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue skies all day long. Woo.
We'll sing. Please repeat after me. I am held in Spirit's holiness, divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love. I am always connected. I see God in everything. I create joy on earth as I share my blessings. Thank you for my life. And so it is.